Hey everybody, this is Eddy Dacius. We here with another episode. We excited to have a special guest. We have a doctor in the house. All right, so her name is Gloria Oikelome, and she gonna tell us about her journey. But before we get to our guest, let's give proud to our sponsors. We have Dacius Facility Management. Call them now, 617-237-0106. or go online at daciusfm.com.
Do you want to maximize the value of your commercial property and achieve optimal productivity and efficiency in your day-to-day business operations? That's where Dacius Facilities Management can help. DFM offers Boston area businesses help in key areas like building and preventive maintenance, handyman services, project and vendor management, and even security consulting at competitive rates. Call Dacius Facilities Management now at 617-237-0106 or visit daciusfm.com today.
DaciusFM.com. You can call them now, 617-237-0106. Like we said, we have our guest today. Her name is Gloria. Gloria, how are you today?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. Excited, and we're gonna go deep in your background. So let's start with the show with the intro.
Welcome to the Divine Purpose Podcast, where we transport you along one of the more dynamic journeys of life. Have you ever been curious to know what it takes to become a successful leader, or about knowing the secrets of life through the Bible? How about engaging in conversation where no topics are off limits? We will take you to new levels with guests who can help you grasp the importance of your calling. Now, here's your host, Eddy Dacius, founder of Dacius Facilities Management.
All right, this is Eddy Dacius with Divine Purpose Podcast. We have our guest, Dr. Oikelome. She's an accomplished educator, scholar, and administrator, and she has more than 20 years as a career in the higher education. She currently serves as a provost and a vice president of academic affairs at Delaware Valley University. This is my word, but we're going to have Dr. Gloria tell us more about her with this famous question we have. What can you tell us about you?
Well, again, Eddy, thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here. Well, I always start with saying I am a mom, I am a wife, I am a daughter, and for me, those three things actually come before my professional title in terms of, just life and priorities. So in the midst of being a mom, a wife, a daughter, I'm one of 7 children, so family and community is really important to me.
Yeah.
And then I serve as Provost, Vice President of Academic Affairs at a Delaware Valley University, which is a private institution out in Pennsylvania. So I look for just ways to balance all those things together, but I'm very passionate about education and mentoring young people. So it's always it's a blessing, I believe, really every day to go into work and really impact the life of young people in education, especially young people who look like me, because they don't really see representation in leadership positions. So it's always a great opportunity to mentor students as well. So
well said. So Gloria, let's go to you just mentioned you have 7 siblings, right? If I got it right. So yeah. How was it growing up in your household, or what was the dynamic?
So not only 7 siblings, but I'm the only girl of all 7.
What? Wow.
So if you can imagine, some days I actually sometimes say at meetings and things that if I can survive growing up among 6 boys, and I'm number 5.
Okay.
But my parents always put me in charge. I think being the only girl, and somehow for them, it's like girls are, more responsible.
Yeah.
So I was always kind of put in that role of, okay, mom and dad are going to not be in the house. You make sure everything is okay. You you let them know if they do and if your brothers don't behave. And so,
wow.
so it was a little crazy. And even now that we're all adults, I still say to my brothers, I have stuff on you that mom and dad don't know, so you just need to treat me nice.
Yeah, you blackmailing them, right? So how was it? So what was it competitive? Like, can you tell us to where like everybody getting sport? Was it just education? Can you tell us what was it going on?
It's interesting because one thing about myself is, I'm a child of immigrants. So my parents immigrated to this country from West Africa.
Yeah.
But America's home for myself and my siblings. So I grew up in this very cross-cultural family, trying to navigate American life. And we still joke and say my parents raised us like we never left the streets of Lagos. So some of the things that, some of our friends, like our American friends or, our white friends or even our Black American friends would get away with, we would say, oh my gosh, if we ever did that, we find ourselves back on a plane to Africa or something, but my parents, two things my father always said, and I'm grateful my parents are still alive today. They're in their 80s, but just enjoying their golden years for all the hard work. But my father always said, God, family, education, in that order, God, family, education. And he would always say, anything you want to do in life, if you don't put God first, it's not going to succeed. And then, in life, always make sure, you prioritize your family, because sometimes when the world is not treating you right, you always have that support system with your family. So your family is important. And that stuck with me as an adult. That's why when you said, tell me about yourself, I started with, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, and then I'm a vice president. Right? Wow. Because there's some days when work is really tough, but my support system at home is what gets me through. Right. And then finally, education, for my parents raising 7 children, in America, we didn't have a lot, grew up in the inner city. It was crazy. It was rough. My brother's got in a lot of trouble and different things that they shouldn't be doing. So my father was very strict because he wanted them to succeed. And, my parents worked multiple jobs to put us through school. And, sometimes some of the things you see today that, still are upsetting in terms of some of the issues that still exist in our country. We faced a lot of that, because a lot of people didn't tell, they didn't tell my parents about all the different educational opportunities. And we were all very smart, my brothers and I. So sometimes teachers, they didn't even know what to do with us sometimes. My one brother, he's a medical doctor today. He skipped 2 grades. I skipped a grade. We were always wanting, like, what's the next thing? We couldn't get enough education. And I think all our teachers were white, and maybe they didn't know what to do with that. Like, you have, these Black students in the classroom, and thankfully,
we're eager for education.
Yes. So thankfully we had a couple teachers who really saw something, and they kept pushing us and they kept challenging us. And my father, hung on to that. So we were pushed hard. And even most kids, it's like, oh, it's summertime, summer vacation. We were like, oh, it's summer, because we know that's like extra study.
Whoa, Gloria. So you said in summertime you got extra study?
Extra study. My father would look for like tutoring, or because he would tell us in Africa, in West Africa, and he would do the accent. So we go to lesson, like when you're out of school, you still have to go to lesson. So he would say, just because you're in America doesn't mean you're going to be on vacation.
So Haitian, and one thing you just mentioned. So I used to get lesson outside of school too.
See, so you get it. It's all in our culture, Afro-Caribbean.
But I didn't know that. Wow. So now, but I had some free summer off, but I think.
Well, my brothers found all kinds of ways to sneak out. As boys, they would go sneak and play football or soccer, because that my father says that's the real football is soccer. Yep. But again, being the only girl, you're supposed to behave. So I would be the one back home still reading my books, and my brothers would be out playing. But I grew up in a very strict household, but I always say to people, it was a house full of love. So you didn't, even though sometimes you saw that strictness like okay, my friends have all this freedom, but you also knew that you were loved, you were supported. So you didn't necessarily rebel against that. Yeah.
So looking at and hearing you talking about your experience with your parents, can you pick a few favorite memories you will share with us today from your childhood?
Yeah, I think, one of the key memories I always remember would be the holiday time, because as I said, our parents worked multiple jobs, so we didn't have enough. But I remember my parents always making sure, like, the holiday was special, even though, I would get back to school after the holidays, and I would see my friends with all these kind of expensive gifts and things they got. But I think our parents did it in such a way that we never felt like, we didn't have. I knew they worked really hard to put those presents under the tree that we got. And they made sure that we didn't that we didn't feel like, we were less than, or that we didn't have. Another memory I have is that my parents really made sure that we were surrounded by what I like to call like the bigger village. So they found other people from West Africa who were here in this country, and all those holidays. So you're always surrounded by all these aunties and uncles, and they're not really your aunties and uncles, but you call them your auntie and your uncle.
It's like the big family,
So it's the big village, and so you just felt a lot of just love and support within that, and those are just the things that stand out for me. And again, it's what's influencing how I'm trying to, how my husband and I were trying to raise our children and make sure they're surrounded with love and with, even with all the challenges in our society. I just have those really good memories of the holidays. And then I remember when my parents took us back because they wanted us to understand the culture and our heritage and the country that, we came from. They didn't want us to lose that. So I remember those first few trips as a young child going back and just being like, wow, this is just amazing, that you have this culture and you have this heritage, and being able to just meet all these extended family members that you didn't know. Yeah. And so, those were some special memories.
Let me ask you this question, if you allow me to. What are the 3 most challenging events in your life, and how did they challenge you?
Wow. I think one of the most challenging events I remember when I went to college. And so remember, I had this upbringing my parents really brought us up believing that we could do anything, right? They have brought us up believing that, with faith, with family support, with education, with working really hard, you can do anything, you can be anything. And we kind of just grew up with that, like that fearlessness as children. Yeah. And I remember when I went to college, and I was majoring in biology, and I had to do, this chemistry course that was really, really challenging. And it was actually really like my first experience with someone treating me differently because of my skin, like someone sort of sending me a message that you can't get through this because people like you don't achieve this. Wow. And it was said in such a way that it knocked off my confidence in such a huge way that I just remember thinking about it like, wow, here's this instructor who's just, and much later in life was when I found out, because then I became a faculty, was that it was the way he was teaching. It wasn't me. But, as a young person, I didn't know it at the time. So wow. I internalized that, and it really messed with me psychologically. But, I have a mother who she's not playing around when it comes to her kids, right? So when I went home and I said, this is what he said, and he said, you should just drop this course because he said, courses. And I remember exactly what he said. He said, subjects like this are difficult for people like you. And I was like, what does he mean? Like people like me? And I just, it hit me in such a hard way. And I came back and my mom was like, how dare, she broke off in all kinds of, things that I probably can't say in a podcast. Yeah. And she just said, no, we're going to get you through this. And I was surrounded by such a support system. But also mentally, though, it took a while for that mindset to just, with support and love, for that to change. And I'm happy to say it's a success story, because 5 years later, after I not only finished and graduated, I got my master's. I actually then went back to my old university and was hired as a faculty member.
Wow.
And this man was still there. So I remember the first faculty meeting where I walked into the room and he looked at me and I looked at him, and I saw respect in his eyes, because now we're equals.
Yeah.
Like I've earned the right to be here.
Wow.
And in my mind, I was thinking, well, no thanks to you. But then my mother will always say to me, well, actually, thanks to him, because sometimes people thinking you can't do something can actually become a gift, depending on how you react to it.
Yeah. You embrace it.
Exactly.
Wow. So, Gloria, this is what I like about this podcast. First question I ask is, what can you tell me about you? And I don't have an order for all the questions I sent you. And now you're taking me to another journey where, not the same journey, but this is not what I expected. So let's go to, okay, you have immigrant parents and you and your siblings are thriving in school. You guys are eager for knowledge. Where did you find that balance in terms of some people, their parents would not be able to help them with their education's challenge or the requirement to help them with their homework because of the gap? So how was it for you?
Well, here's what's interesting. I'll break that down. So one of the things that was fortunate for me was that my mother was a math teacher for many, many years. Back in West Africa. She was a math teacher. And she just got a certificate and then learned how to teach. But my father never went to college, really. Okay. But one thing that I learned from my parents is my parents always advocated for us. So even when they couldn't help with homework, my mother would march to the school and bang on every door. She would be talking to the teachers, talking to the counselors. And, sometimes we'll be so embarrassed, like, oh my gosh, here's our African mother showing up. And she's just, gesturing. And, Africans were very energetic. Yep. But it was much later in life that I realized that even though she knew she didn't have it within herself, because she taught, math at, maybe like you could say like middle school level. Yeah. But when we now started getting higher and higher, and she couldn't help. And my father, I mean, there were times I was helping him with like writing and with, just even I remember like we'll go through like a McDonald's drive-through. We'll be trying to interpret for my parents because people, they can't understand them. They're saying, hamburger, this kind of experience. So it's the grandparents. What I appreciated about them is where they didn't have those resources, they fought and they went to look for it. And so even now, sometimes I mentor a lot of students or I talk to parents and say, you may not be educated. You may not have the means. You may not, be wealthy. But there are resources out there. You can become an advocate for your child, or even if you're as an adult, learn to become an advocate for yourself. That's how we overcame a lot of those gaps. And I think if my parents hadn't advocated for us, I truly don't believe I would be sitting where I'm sitting today. I truly don't believe that.
How important are those memories for you now? Looking back, how important, I think you will take from them to help with your own situation now. Now you're a mom. I don't know the age, but you will help them. You're going to advocate. How important are those lessons you learn from your parents?
Oh, they're so critical. And now I make sure that I explain that to my children all the time because, kids, now my kids, they just crossed into teenage years and, they're more aware. So, and I laugh sometimes because, and for any parents who's listening, you always swear to yourself, you'll never sound like your parents. You'll never do what your parents did. And then sometimes I hear myself saying something or trying to tell my kids how to, you know, some life lesson. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I sound exactly like my mom. I did this, you know, but that's just a cycle of life, isn't it? And I think for me, it's really important now to advocate for my children. I mean, I'm present. You go to the teacher conference. I always look for is there any teacher that's teaching my children that, you know, that maybe they can't do something? Is there any teacher that's, putting anything in my child's head to kind of demotivate them? Like, I'm very, very sensitive to that. Because I know, again, my parents did that for me, and our children need that. They need us to do that. I work, before I worked at a university, I started my career in middle school teaching 8th grade.
Okay.
And I could always tell the children who had parents at home that didn't care, because they were the parents who wouldn't show up for a teacher conference, or they were the parents who, and probably because they were going through some challenges in their life, you know, and it was tough for them. So you could always tell the children who had support at home and the children who nobody was telling them that education was important, because there's just this cycle that the parents are also struggling.
Yeah.
So it's really just important, you know, when I speak at different things and try to just encourage parents, or through my church and things like that. And I just say, be an advocate for your children, because they really, really need it.
And thank you, Dr. Gloria, to your well explained situation and going back to your journey. But what was your dream job in high school, in college, and now? I like to ask this question because there's probably it might be a straight line, it might be a wave. So what was it for you?
Okay, so don't laugh. So for whatever reason, I wanted to be like this forecaster on TV, like the news channel people, and just tell the news.
Yeah.
And my parents and my siblings did tell me all throughout my life, you know, I would always just walk around the house with like a microphone or like a pencil, and I turn everything into like an interview, you know, like, oh, I'm in the kitchen with mom and what's for dinner today? This kind of, you know, and she just like, get out of here, you know. But I remember I just had that passion for just like communication. And one year there was like a big tornado in our neighborhood. So I was going all around to all the neighbors, like interviewing them, like, you know, like how I see the news people do after a storm or something. But, you know, I got into high school and college, and I took a couple science classes, and I fell in love with science. So I went on that path. But I will tell you that a lot of my job today is communicating. So I feel like I still do some of that passion because I use those skills. But I don't know how I went from wanting to be a news anchor to a researcher scientist and then a faculty and an administrator. It's like a journey like this, but
yes, it's like a wave. But
I'm still using communication skills today, which I think is critical in any job, really. So, I mean, you've got a podcast, you have communication skills, or you wouldn't be able to do that, right?
No, definitely. So which of your accomplishment you are the proudest? You have a lot.
I do, but honestly, I think it's the greatest honor and privilege to be a mother. I really do.
Wow.
And it's crazy because even when I say that to some friends, people are like, oh, you know, you're this career woman, you're a vice president, and I said, yeah, but you know, when it's all said and done, it's the opportunity to sow into the next generation. That's where my legacy is. That's where the impact. And I just feel so blessed to be able to like shape and mold the next generation, especially in our current world. There's so many challenges. There's still so many things they face because of, you know, their race, their, you know, and to me, I think that's just the biggest accomplishment is if with God's help, I can produce and develop children who will make an impact in their world in ways that I didn't even do. Wow. I think for me, that will be that's my proudest accomplishment.
And is there one thing you wish you knew before you started your career?
Wow. Yeah. I wish I had told myself in a stronger way who to put value on. And what I mean by that is throughout my career, as I said, as an African-American woman in academic affairs, I'm like in 2% of people in this position in higher education. And it was a very bumpy road to get there. And some of that was because you would have thought I learned my lesson with that teacher who did that to me back in college. But at different points during my career, other people came along who were just like that faculty, and I still let them get in my head.
Yeah.
And so if I could kind of tell myself, I would say, you know what? Be more intentional about who you put value on, because I can't stop people from having whatever opinion, right?
Yes, you can.
That's what I tell my children today. You're going to meet people who have all kinds of, you're going to meet crazy people. You're going to meet people who have a problem with you because of your skin or your beliefs or whatever identity you're going to have. But you can't control that, but you can control the value you put on them.
Yes.
And so I think each day I still work through that to make sure that I don't put so much value on the wrong people, because that can really mess you up in life, I think.
And I think, and I appreciate this. This is same advice I would give to anybody, and I'm taking this advice for myself too, because there's so much negativity. And I will go with this question. When did you realize you made it? The reason I ask this question, because there's this big imposter syndrome where people don't feel like they don't belong. But when did you realize that? Like it's like they announce it. Here is Dr. Gloria. When did you realize like you made it? You got it figured out. You settle.
It's interesting. I think I would say maybe this was about 4 or 5 years ago, where as a vice president of academic affairs at not the institution I'm in now, I was VP at another institution. The first year when at graduation, and if you know anything about a typical college graduation, you have the people, you put on your big robes, and, so by then I had my doctorate degree. And instead of being, I went from the person learning to getting my own degrees, then teaching in the classroom for many, 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 many years. And then suddenly you're on this big stage, hundreds of students graduating, thousands of people in the audience. And I was a person handing people the degrees and shaking their hands. Wow. And I just remember in that moment where I thought, wow, God, this is you, right? Wow. And I went from the person of, can I make it? Can I do this class? Here's a faculty telling me I can't do this class. So I am now the one saying, I'm conferring this degree on you, because I've earned that privilege to do that. And that was, it was a very emotional moment for me. I remember that day. And although now I don't know that, I think you have different moments where, God reminds you of his grace and that you made it. Because if you're not careful, your head can get in the way and still bring that imposter syndrome back, right? Yeah. Even now, I'm working in an institution where, I'm the first person of color in this position. I'm the only person who looks like me in the whole president's leadership team. And you walk into the room sometimes to give a presentation, and if you're not careful, those thoughts can come back of like, do I belong? Do they, am I competent? And then you just have to tell those thoughts.
Yes. Yeah. You have to be strong. And I will kind of dive deeper in it, because I feel like there's a lesson people can learn from it. And as you in your position, and which makes sense. So how do you stay grounded? Yeah. How do you stay focused? How do you keep going? How do you keep the light up?
Yeah. Well, I'll answer the first question. How do I stay grounded? Gratitude. Every day I wake up, I'm saying, God, thank you for where I am today, because it's not because I've arrived. It's not because I'm the smartest person in the room. It's not because I have it all together. It's by your grace. So I am grateful. I think when you lose a sense of gratitude, you can really go to all kinds of not good places in your head, because when you're not grateful, then you become arrogant. And when you're arrogant, you look down on people, and it's just a bad domino effect. So I stay grounded by being grateful and reminding myself that I didn't get here just by my own, and then I stay, just hopeful and optimistic by, they're kind of linked together. I always think the same God who got me here, he's going to get me through whatever is the next step, right? So, yeah.
So let's look back in your past. In college, I don't think you had any idea that's where you will be. I'm just guessing. You probably. Not even close. But how was Gloria? Why was Gloria in that mindset? So what was it for you in terms of, in college, were you down to sturdy? Were you pattering, like hybrid party, sturdy? So let's get a sense to your college experience.
So here's the thing. I think if you were talking to my brothers, they'll probably tell you they partied their way through college more than me. I think this whole idea of being the only girl growing up like in an African household, you even if you want to go party and do things you shouldn't do, you see your mom's face, just
like it's like a reminder.
I loved. I got involved in a lot of activities, and I loved athletics, so I participated. And I think I just had a good experience. I had a very small group of friends, and I just enjoyed the journey. But I don't think I would ever put myself as this crazy partying person. I think I was just too scared.
which pay off, I think some people will balance it, and that's like you had a different calling.
Yes.
So before we continue, let's take a break, and we'll be back with Dr. Gloria Oikelome.
What comes before making a smart decision? Choices. A smart choice is the best option, which is who we are. That's why our clients expect more from us and, in return, get more in everything we do. We understand the problem. That's why we thrive for excellence. We don't just create a winning culture. We aspire to be a smart choice, a voice for solutions. We believe in integrity, professionalism, and teamwork. Our passion is to bring results from our clients by working harder, smarter, and faster. As a team, we always deliver because we recognize your needs. Choosing smart influences us to be the best version of ourselves. That makes us different than other companies. It makes us confident in achieving our goals. It makes us who we are. And it makes us DFM, the smart choice.
Hey everybody, this is Eddy Dacius. We're back with our special guest. We had Dr. Gloria Oikelome with us today, and she did a great job telling us about her journey, and we have her for more questions. The question I will ask her: what is one piece of advice you will give somebody starting their career now?
I would say just dream big and don't limit yourself. It comes back to everything I've been saying, that you're going to have the naysayers. You're going to have the people who they think they know you and they think they can tell you what you can and you can't be. And it just goes back to that. Be careful who you put value on. Be very, very careful. And you have to kind of evaluate your life and decide, okay, this person is just always negative and really doesn't feel like I can get anywhere. So we're just not going to put value on them anymore. And then this person is here in my corner, championing me. Then yes, I'm going to put value on them and use that to motivate me. So it's about surrounding yourselves with the right people.
So who has been your most support, your biggest cheerleader in terms of allowing you to keep going, and as you accomplished many things, so to kind of help you focus on your goal?
Yeah, well, I've already shared about my parents, so obviously they shaped and molded a big part of my childhood. But as I got older and started early in my career, God just put some really just wonderful women and mentors around me. So, find mentors. I have a couple aunts that were just really instrumental in my life. And then now later in life, I would actually say I think my husband is probably my biggest cheerleader, because I got my second doctorate degree much later in life, when my kids were like 5 and 7, and I needed to go back and get this degree for my career progression. And I was like, how am I going to go back to school after all these years? I'm just done. And he was like, nope, you're going to do this. You're going to do it. We're going to get it done. And so to just have that support is really been a blessing.
And I think so too. I think looking at your biography and everything you accomplished, and is there a position you had the most joy, or you like? I don't know if you can say.
Yeah, I love that question. I don't know if there's one job that I will say, but I think every job along the way, there were elements of the job that gave me joy. I really love where I am now at this institution. It's just a really special place, so that it's given me lots of joy. But I think I can say that about a number of places I've worked at. And then there were a few places that didn't give me so much joy.
So looking back, because some people said bad experience can be like a lesson learned, can be something you use for the greater good in your life. Yeah. Is there any situation you had which wasn't pleasant? Yeah. But looking back, you used to get you through something now?
Yeah. Well, I think the one I already shared with that teacher, and although it was really my parents who used that, so I don't know if I could credit myself 100%, but I will say later in life, in sort of my first couple jobs in the career, I had some really, really tough, supervisors. Yeah. I feel like they woke up every morning and they decided their goal was just to make my life miserable. Yeah. And it's so funny that now that I'm in a position where I supervise so many people, when sometimes people who report to me or, people that I oversee want to do, I always have that leader in the back of my mind, because I remember how I was made to feel. And I always say, I would even tell myself during that time, if I ever get to a position of authority, I won't lead this way. So sometimes you learn or you become in life by what you observe that you shouldn't do, right? Yeah. So sometimes we always say, be a good examples, a good role models, but sometimes the things that stick with you the most that say this is the kind of leader or the kind of person is when you observe somebody who was doing the wrong thing. And then you said, that will not be me. Right?
No, and I agree. What do people misunderstand about you the most?
Wow, that's a great question. I think because my life is this intersection, right? I have this whole African culture that has all kinds of different traditions and values that I have to navigate. And then I have this whole American culture. And then within American culture, there's Black culture within American culture. Yeah. And I think sometimes people don't know what box to put me in, because there's so many, there are days when I have to think with my African hat. And then there are days when I just think okay, as an American. And then, because I remember growing up, sometimes the Black American kids would say, why are you acting white? And then, in African culture, then my father would say something like, oh, but you're African, you're not Black American. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Then, then there's like Black culture within America, and I don't always align with all that. So I think until people get to know me, they're sometimes a little confused, because they have their stereotypes, right? People stereotype how they think you should be. And sometimes they either don't even take the time to get to know you, or they make assumptions about you.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I think it's time for Hot Topic. Hot Topic, it's a segment where we talk about important topics, questions related to your career or yourself, question about our audience would have the chance to ask Dr. Gloria today. Let's go with Hot Topic. Hey, this is Eddy Dacius with Dr. Gloria today. Hot topic. So hot topic for Dr. today, Gloria. So did you know you had the responsibility to bridge the gap from your parent and you now? Did you know when you were growing up, that was your responsibility?
I love that question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question, even though it's such a huge part of my life. But I didn't know it then, even though we were doing it all the time. It really wasn't until I got older that I realized that even what a burden that was sometimes to have to carry that, because, you love your parents, you see them sometimes struggling because the accent and people couldn't understand, and you're constantly carrying that for them. And it wasn't until later in life that I remember that I saw how much they leaned on us. But when it was happening, sometimes as a child, you just do things and you don't really think about it. Yeah. So I didn't know it then, but I know it now. And interestingly, I think in some ways I still do it now, because, you can't change. You take, a parent who, they may be in their 80s now, but if their first 40 or 50 years of their life, they grew up in one culture, even if they spend 30, 40 years, in a different culture, home is still home, right? Yeah. So And
let's say we were interviewing your parents, and let's say I said, what would be their favorite childhood memories? I don't think it would be here. It would be in the country, right? Right. That's the same thing. That's the gap.
Exactly.
People. So now this is my following question. Do you think that there is an identity crisis when you are first generation immigrant?
Absolutely. It's interesting you should say that, because it's a topic I'm really passionate about. I speak at a lot of different churches, a lot of churches that are maybe more like more African population, but it's all first generation. So you're trying to help, the parents and just kind of bridge that gap of things that you understand. And I think it is. I think, and I see it. Sometimes I'll talk to my Hispanic friends and colleagues, and they'll say the same thing, So I really think that, I think it definitely exists. It really, really then definitely exists.
So this is one thing before. So I'm a father of two, and my son is 4, my daughter is 2. So
okay, excellent.
So they're really young. But where I'm at is there are some things, and I was telling my wife, we kind of have to keep up with the technology, keep up with education. Even we are educated. I have my wife, she has a master, I have a bachelor. I'm working into, but you have a PhD. I don't know about your husband, but my question is, do you think there will be a translation where your children, they're gonna be more advanced in what you had to do with what your parents had to do for you, you're gonna have to do for them, as they're gonna have to be, or they're gonna be advanced in their education?
Yeah. Well, I think so. My husband also has a PhD, so this doctor, and he's a professor at a university.
Okay,
and I think we definitely instilled in our children education, and isn't that every parent's dream? Like, I know my parents look at us today, and by God's grace, we sponsor our parents, we pay for their home, we send them on vacations, and as a way to say thank you, right?
Yeah,
and definitely now we're living a better life than they did. Yeah. And I think when I look at myself and my siblings, the ones that have children, our children are living even a better life than we did.
Yeah.
So we hope that, they will continue down that path and then their own children, and I tell my kids all the time, you better take care of me. Don't put me in a nursing home. Don't put, Yeah.
No, that's good to hear, because as technology is going fast and people are learning new ways to be educated, we still have to keep up and we still have to catch up in terms of like what's going on out there, and be in the mindset of keep. Yeah. It's not like it's a long-term journey. Education is a long-term journey.
I still don't. Every time I get like a phone upgrade, I just hand it to my daughter like, okay. The way they're communicating and the way they're navigating life is so different than what we had. It's amazing.
So let's go with this. Now, looking back, and it's an unfair question, but looking back at your parents and at your sibling, I don't know if you can answer that question, but it's a challenge, it's a hot topic. Who do you think accomplished the most?
Wow. Between myself and my siblings, or myself?
Yeah. Yes, yourself and your siblings.
I hope they're not listening. So honestly, I mean, I am, I'm a doctor, a PhD doctor. I have a brother before. I have my oldest brother is a PhD. He's an engineer. And then we have a medical doctor. So there's 3 doctors in the family. Yeah. And then I have 2 brothers who run their own business, and they always joke and say they make more money than all of us as doctors.
Oh man, yeah.
I think everyone is successful in their own way, and it's a blessing. It really is.
And that's the best answer.
Yeah,
and that's the best answer. And then it wasn't a trick question, but that's definitely.
I know. But I bet if they were here, they would have different, because we're also very competitive as siblings.
Competitive. That's what I said. So I grew up with a big family too. Everybody's competitive. It's for the greater good. Everybody trying to make their parents and the family proud, Mm-hmm. And so let's go with. Is there a question you wish I asked you today?
No, actually, you asked me some things that I'm going to file away that I may use in talking points when I speak at different places, especially the one about the parents, and did I know that I was navigating that way for them? That was really insightful for me. But no, not at all. It's just my privilege to be here. I'm honored. Thank you.
So that's the million question now. What is the path for somebody to want to have your title one day?
Wow, that's great. Well, I hope many people listening will want to, because we need more leaders in education. It's a wonderful opportunity to mentor. And if you have a passion for young people, for learning, for education, I would say start there. And there's so many ways to get here. You can go through teaching, you can go through just administration. But, there's the beauty of the position that I'm privileged to have is that there's different ways to get there, but you definitely have to have a passion for young people, and you have to be passionate about education. Those 2 things you can't, that would be like, you want to sell food, but you're selling a kind of food that you hate. I don't know if you would really be passionate if you would be passionate. And
I think that's great to hear in terms of what your responsibility is. So the next question is now, what is a typical day for a provost and a vice president of academic affairs at Delaware Valley University?
Wow. I don't even know if there's a typical day, but most days I oversee different schools. So the grad school, School of Life Sciences, School of Business, and I meet with the deans. We talk about, programs and how we can improve. Many of my days sometimes I'm in classrooms. I was just in a classroom this week to listen to a really dynamic speaker that was just an inspiration for some of our minority students. It was excellent. And I mentor a number of students. So I have different meetings with them during the week where they just come in and share how they're doing and maybe where they're struggling and how I can help. And then I'm responsible to a president, and he's responsible to a board of trustees. So sometimes you sit in those really tense meetings.
Yeah.
But my favorite part is when I'm meeting with the students.
No, that's good to hear. So now let's go to, is there something you wish you studied or you knew how to do? As somebody who has 2 PhDs, right? Is there something you wish you knew how to do?
So I would have wanted to, we're a very musical family, and I took piano lessons for many years. I play piano and play it, well, not very well, but well. But I also loved the saxophone, and I really wish I had and my mom had told me, join the band and play the saxophone. And anytime I hear jazz music, or I just, it takes me to a place, and that's the one thing that I don't know. I never say never. I'm a lifelong learner. So I don't know, maybe in a few years, I'll just pick up a saxophone.
Wow. That's great. So this was Hot Topic with Gloria. So Gloria, what are the 3 books you will recommend our audience today, and why? Is there any book you can recommend us?
One. Well, first of all, I'm going to say the Bible, by virtue of my faith. That's where you find inspiration. And I know maybe some people think that's an old-fashioned book. It's outdated. But I believe you find all kinds of wisdom and encouragement for life in there. And then the second book I would recommend is it's actually called the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's a Stephen Covey book. Yeah. I think that's a really, really great book just for, getting it together. And then this is more of a topic, but I would recommend any book on emotional intelligence, because you can be really smart and know your stuff, but if you don't know how to manage people and deal with emotions and communicate, it'll be really hard for you to do any job or even be in a relationship. So, yeah.
So that's a fun part. We're trying to close in now.
Absolutely. This is good.
So now, from Eastern University to Immaculata University, Long Island University, Bethel University, which one was your favorite?
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I was spot in this series. I hope none of them are listening. That's hard. I'm going to have to say they all had a purpose in my life. Come on, Gloria. Come on. But you know what? I have to give a shout out to Eastern, though. I had a wonderful experience.
Yeah, wonderful. That's good. That's good. Thank you. That was great. We had a great fun with you. Absolutely. And learning more about you and your dedication for higher education. And I can say you are a lifelong learner. And so now the last question will be, what the future holds for you?
So because of what my parents has instilled in me and so my passion, so I'm already starting some of this, but I do want to go back to different countries in Africa. So, Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, Cameroon, and do something with education more. Either be part of a university and I already write curriculum now for some universities in different countries, but I would love to have a school, maybe just for girls. Yeah. In any of those countries.
What about the boys? What about the boys?
Okay,
Come on.
We'll get the boys into. Okay, we'll let the boys in.
All right. So, Gloria, that was very, very, very interesting conversation. I learned a lot, and honestly, there were some questions I didn't have, but the way you took us to that journey, I had to ask those questions, and you were graceful enough to take us there. Last word for you.
I just thank you for having me. And then, like I said, to anyone who will listen to this, just watch who you put value on in life, because it's going to make a big difference in where you go. So put value on the right people, surround yourself with the right people. Yeah.
Gloria Oikelome. She is a lifelong learner. She's very intelligent and she's very successful. She's the provost and vice president of academic affairs at Delaware Valley University. We had her on our 44th episode. Please check us online, www.dppodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcast, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If you go on YouTube, you're going to find us, Divine Purpose Podcast. And if you are on any other social media, reach out to us. This is Eddy Dacius with Gloria. We had a great time. Thank you, Gloria. Appreciate the time.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.